This is Flowers on the Stage.
Well, LaMP has been an interesting one because Russ Ray and I recorded a record in like 2018 or so. And then everybody was really busy in 2018. And then kind of halfway to towards the end of 2019, we all went back and listened to the record individually again. And we all said, wow, that record that we made last year is really kind of holding up really well, which is a rare thing. Like, not always, it doesn't always go that way when you make a record. You can think it's awesome, and then you hear it a year later, and you're like, yeah, it was all right. So it's really nice when one really holds up. And anyway, at that point in mid 2019, we sort of reconvened and got a momentum going and an enthusiasm happening where we say, this really holds up, and this would be really great to see how it feels to get it out there to the world and see how it feels in front of some people, because we never played any of the songs in person. We only played together that one time in the studio, that material, and it was like a 3-day session in 2018. And so we finally got it together, and we had some gigs booked for 2020, like early to mid 2020. And yeah, exactly. Those didn't happen. No gigs happened in early to mid 2020. And instead of trying to do like a live stream or something like this, we just decided, let's wait for the real thing for this project. So then, like, it was the same thing. That happened twice to us. It happened once in kind of early-ish 2020, and then again at the end of, I guess it was 2021 going into 2022, and there was like some new variant that went around, and everybody had to cancel everything again at the end of the year. So it was like twice. We were so close. And the second time, the shows were all announced and everything. Like, people were psyched to hear what it was going to be. So that was really pretty heartbreaking. And it was just like this big collective, like, we got shut down again. But I think that second time of getting shut down really gave us a collective, enthusiasm for when we were going to get the opportunity to finally do it. And man, last year, I think we did about rough, ballpark 20 shows in 2023. And man, I wouldn't change a thing. Like, all 20 shows it was just great. It was just great. Like, everything about the shows felt great. Everything about the hang feels great. I love playing with those guys. The audiences have been super enthusiastic, and like, there've been, really great turnouts for everything. And yeah, so I guess that the current chapter with LaMP is just kind of, we're doing it. We've got a couple of shows announced next year in March in Colorado, and there's like a whole slew more that I was just doing the emailing with the booking agent a minute ago. Like, there's going to be a substantial amount of gigs.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it feels great to. I've never really had an original project that's come out of the gates so strong. 20 gigs in, and I think about 15 of those were sellout gigs or something, like some ridiculous ratio of the gigs have been sellouts. And every show, regardless of whether or not it was sold out or anything, was very, very enthusiastic crowd response, as well as a response from the three of us. We're coming off stage every night being like, oh man, that part that you did this or whatever, and just like, we're really, I think all three of us are really big fans of one another's playing. And that's a crucial part of the thing to keep enthusiasm up.
So what is the LaMP origin story?
Right. It's actually the booking agent. It was the booking agent's idea. It's one of these rare instances where the band members didn't think of the idea. Russ, Ray, and I obviously knew each other just peripherally from running into each other at festivals here and there, the way musicians do. You have some, I don't know, a pulled pork sandwich, at some festival in Indiana or something together in catering, and you say, "Oh, great seeing you. See you around. We ought to play sometime," and then it just never happens, of course, because everybody's schedules are so busy. Um, and then, it had come up a couple of times, like, "Oh yeah, we ought to play," I'll see you around, okay, and everybody's just busy and whatnot. Never happened. And then our booking, we were both on the same booking agency at the time. This guy Pat May was booking all of us, and it was his idea to get us all together. He was like, "You guys really should do it," and I think that all of us were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, we should do that." And he was like, "No, don't just say you're going to do it. Like, let me make it happen for you guys." And he booked us a one night gig at Nectar's, in early 2018, which was when we all had this aha moment where we were like, "Oh, the three of us playing together really works and is really easy." And we didn't have any material; we just sort of improvised. And I learned a few of their songs, the Soul Monday songs, and they learned a few of the Wolf songs that I brought to the table. And then, when we decided that we wanted to make a record, we wrote the record remotely with Russ sending around drum parts, and Ray would put down the chord progression or a melody or something, and then he would send it to me. And which we were kind of ahead of the curve, because 2 years later, in 2020 and 2021, everybody was forced to record remotely. So we did that. We wrote the tunes in 2018 remotely, and then we recorded them all together in the summer of 2018. I hope I'm getting that right. It's somewhere around there, up in Vermont.
Well,
And
shout
then
out Pat
another,
May. Pat
yeah,
May.
Pat May.
Man,
He did it, man. He nailed
let's
it.
go. I love it. So last time, Scott, we talked a little bit about sobriety. I'd love to hear, other than being productive, how you'd say sobriety's influenced you as a musician.
Oh my God. I mean, I don't really even know. We could just talk for the rest of the 45 minutes about this. I won't, but I could. And that's how enormous of an impact being sober has had on me, not just as a musician, really, but just as a human being and like my entire life experience. Um, but I guess, if I had to hit like some of the top bullet points of what I think sobriety brings to the table for me is, one, I'm just very reliable, like in very fundamental things. I'm very consistent in terms of, when I show up, I'm always the same guy. It's not like I'm showing up one day and fine, and then the next day showing up like wildly hungover and can't, perform to the same level that I could the day before. And consistency becomes a very big thing when I've been a musician now for 25 years, you know, and it's not cool to be, I wouldn't be a musician for that long if I was showing up and I was like, one day I played great. And then like the next 3 days I sucked. And then the next day I was like incredible. And then I was like kind of okay the next day. Like there's a sort of a lane that I can stay in where I can show up and I can, perform to a certain degree every time. Um, I mean, that's just one thing. Just obviously, I mean, I think that one of the obvious ones is sort of I'm just much more present for everything in life. I'm not. I think that when I was using or what I see people when they're playing, if someone is on something, or I know that for me, when I was under the influence of stuff, I could get into playing something and I could really be sure like this is, I would just be so into it, you know, without taking any consideration into is this even like appropriate to be playing right now at all. It was just kind of a total free for all in kind of thing. And I was just like, oh fuck it, you know, like we're doing this and this is it, you know. And now having 18 years of being sober under my belt, I'm so aware of like my surroundings and like what's happening, and you know, I can kind of take pause even in the middle of like a very high energy moment with a lot of action happening. I can kind of take a step out into the audience almost and just hear what's happening, and sort of it all happens on a very deep level. It's not like necessarily actively thinking, it's more of a feeling thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I can really feel in the moment, and I think appropriately. You know, I'm not on some like wild emotional roller coaster that is being controlled by like whatever I took 20 minutes before I walked on stage. You know,
Mm.
um, that's, I mean, you know, and I could go on and on and on, but really, to me, the sobriety thing is, I'm convinced that like um, being sober is kind of like the most wild, you know, like psychedelic experience you could imagine. Like I'm just so like in awe of this whole thing. Like we're like all even here and this is happening, and like, you know, just life in general and music, the gift that music is, you know, like I'm good. Like I don't need anything to to bump that up
Is that
for
something
me.
that's like surprises you? Like, because I feel like people in party scenes, you think about being sober and that feels like boring. And so like what you just said, the awe and it seems like you're loving life. Like, is that something that you didn't expect entering into it all?
Well, yeah, I mean, entering into it, I didn't know which way it was up. You know, if we're talking about entering into sobriety, I mean, it was just like, okay, just get from Tuesday to Wednesday, you know, and then I'll worry about the rest of it like on Thursday. You know, like I'll start it all over on Thursday and then get from Thursday to Friday. You know, it was like these super small, bite-sized little challenges, really, every day. Um, so yeah, I mean, I couldn't see this far out, you know, at the beginning for sure, because 18 years is a long time. I mean, if I had a kid the day that I got sober, the kid would be like driving and going to college now. Um, uh, but you know, now I see people like taking stuff, and I don't make any sort of judgment at all. Like I get it, and you know, there's no, you know, it's your thing, and everybody should do whatever they want to do, and everyone's in different places in life. But I see people taking stuff before gigs and stuff, and I'm always kind of like, man, kind of selling yourself short by doing it in a way. For me,
Mm.
you know, like I would, you know, I know that I would, if I were to take, you know, some sort of substance before playing now, I would really miss out on a huge part of the emotional fulfillment that music has to offer.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know?
This is Flowers on the Stage, a podcast about being creative and finding success. To support it, please check out our sponsors, New Belgium Brewing, Thrax CBD, and Ticket Relief, the ticketing company that plants trees with a portion of each ticket sold. And now, back to the episode.
Jumping a little bit to the side, can you tell me like the backstory of you deciding with your life to go all in on music?
Yeah. Um, I didn't really, you know, it just kind of was like a thing of a feeling, honestly. Um, there was probably like a week there or something, you know, in there like in 2009 or something, where I was like, maybe I should try and get a job. I mean, but for me, that was always it just doesn't seem. realistic. For me, it was just it just wasn't really an option. Like I couldn't really picture life not being a musician.
How old were you when that became your frame of mind?
Yeah, well, I got obsessed with music pretty early, like 16, 14, 15, 16 was right around when I started playing the guitar. And it was like I was all in, it was like
Parents super
obsession.
supportive.
Parents were super supportive. I think a little nervous, but supportive, you know. Um, and that's how parents should be if somebody tells them they're going to be a musician, It's risky from a parental standpoint. But yeah, very supportive. There were some years though. I mean, I sort of made up my mind at one point, a few years after I got sober. I was like, well, look, because I was playing gigs all over New York, but there were very small gigs and not a whole lot of pay, involved. And I made up my mind in like 2009 or so, 10, that like I'm cool with it if this is it. Like if I just play around small clubs and you know, I'm not like a star or something or whatever. Like the music is enough for me. And if I gotta, if I live like this poor life and that's fine. Like I definitely remember thinking to myself, like coming to terms with, I'm cool with this. If this is it, you know, the, and I still feel that way, like, the big gigs, it's all amazing. And I feel like very fortunate to be a part of the things that I'm a part of. But at the end of the day, the best feeling still is like, working on something on the guitar and like, you're working on something for weeks and weeks. And you're like, God damn, like I can't, why does this not feel right? It's not feel right. And then you have that time where it all clicks and you have the aha moment and you can go to bed that night being like, oh man, I did it. Like I got it. I mean, that's worth more than any, that'll give you a lot more sustainability than any paycheck or any, that's the best part of the whole thing still.
Talking more about your creative process, maybe you do or don't have an actual process, but what's something you stay away from doing creatively that you think has helped you be successful?
Do I stay away from? I try to stay away from doing what everyone else is doing, for sure. Like if everyone is into a certain kind of guitar playing or a certain guitarist or a certain piece of gear, I'll certainly check those things out because I feel like, it's what I do for a living and I need to be aware of what's going on. But if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to like feel like that, I need to learn how to do this to stay in the game or something. Um, uh, I definitely think that part of the reason that I have been in the game for as long as I have is because of that. There's been plenty of people that have coming on and, that I've seen and come into the scene and lots of people be like, oh, they're the next, so-and-so, or they sound like so-and-so, and that doesn't always last. Those people don't always stick around, but it's the people that have something slightly different to say. And I think that for me has been a thing to actively not take what I know might work. Because it's sort of tempting, when you can play and you're like, oh, I know if I dropped a solo that sounded like this person here, I know they'd all dig it, and it's easy to be tempted by that. And it takes character and it takes, sort of, again, that perspective we were talking about with the sobriety to not do that for me.
Yeah, I feel like creatively, you're always trying to create something new. It's a new song and we're branching out, growing. That's not always growing to be the same thing, just a different version. growing to be different in some way. And I'd love to hear you somehow try to answer how you see your style evolving, how you see yourself as an artist evolving over, not only the short term future, but over the next 5, 10, 20 years, how you maybe see yourself shifting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I see myself as a culmination of all the people that I have decided to check out. You know, I just check out people that are pretty under the radar. Like I do a lot of research and I become fans of people that are not household names to everyone. And it's a process, it's a process of going through and kind of biting off stuff that I like and learning how to play things that I hear and I relate to. And then slowly, it can take years sometimes of playing things. And then slowly there's a moment where it's like, oh, wait, I just did it a slightly different way or came at it from a slightly different angle. And now it's all of a sudden that's sort of a Scott Metzger thing. And there was a funny moment actually. It was kind of crazy. I did a gig. I haven't thought about this, but you're making me realize it now that there was a pretty big moment exactly like that for me just a few weeks ago. I played with a guy who's definitely a hero of mine, Nels Klein, who's a guitar. He's like a guitar. He's on the Mount Rushmore of electric guitar players, as far as I'm concerned. And he sort of has this sound that's like very wiggly. Like he sort of does this move where he'll hit the string back by the bridge, so it's kind of a very tinny sound. And then he plays a jazz master with a whammy bar on it, and he kind of goes nuts on the whammy bar real quick. So it gives this very fast vibrato sound, like very like wiggly kind of sound. And I play a Telecaster most of the time, which does not have the whammy bar. But I sort of came up with this way of fingering the note and then jumping back and forth very quickly between two frets. It's like very like aggressive. It's like
Well,
it gets
quick
sort of
slide.
the same sound. Yeah, as opposed to it's basically my version of doing the whammy bar thing that he does. Anyway, we were playing and we were both soloing at the same time. And we both did the same move at the same moment. It was like we both were hearing the thing going to the same place, and it was like this streams crossed for a second, and we both did this thing, and he did his version of it, and he did mine, and we both just looked at each other and laughed. It was an amazing moment for me to kind of be like, oh wow, we did it, because I think that evolved out of listening to him as much as I had. And I came up with this version of that sound that I associated with him, but it was sort of a slightly different way of getting that sound, and I guess, I just continue to try and follow, it's a slow process of coming up with, I have no idea what my sound or style is, or if I have a sound or a style, but it's just a very slow process of enjoying the process and, not trying to feel rushed, not being in a hurry about it, and just letting things come out naturally. And over the course of years, that happens.
What are the most important things that you've come to learn throughout your career about what makes a great leader of a group?
To me, I like the idea of, well, everybody's got to feel essential in the band. I want everybody in the band feeling like if they weren't there, this would not be the same and this would not be as good. And, I want everybody walking out feeling like their thing is there for a reason, and that we're all in it together, not that there's us and them, like everybody needs to have their moments where they can step out and they can like shine, and they're their thing is really highlighted. But that we're all moving together, you know, in this thing, because there's only two things at a concert. You know, there's essentially two things happening. There's a vibe in the audience, and then there's a vibe on stage. All the rest is just detail, you know. And a good show is when those two things sort of line up, you know, I think, and get in sync. But you can't really force it. Like, you have to be in the band, you have to be willing to sort of hold the line and being like, you know, we're doing our thing, and it's sort of us versus them. And like, let's go. You know, like, we're going to get it. And so just checking in with everybody, you know, not even actively, but just when you check in with people either in between songs or just eye contact, you know, just letting everybody know, like, we're cool, like, we're doing it, we're still in it together, you know, especially when it's not going well. That's like crucial, because people start getting angry, or, you know, if it start getting frustrating up there, it can be tough to get it back together, you know. And I think the other thing, as a band, you know, I've been doing a lot of trio gigs, and one of the things that I think about a lot is how everyone should be given the opportunity to, like, I want somebody in the audience to leave with on their mind is, wow, the guy that I had never seen before in this band is now my favorite musician. You know, like, I want somebody to discover their new favorite musician at a gig that I'm on, and not me. You know what I mean? I don't mean me. You know, that'd be weird. But you know what I mean? Like, I want it to be like a celebration of what everybody that I'm on stage with can do. And, you know, I play with some fucking amazing people, you know, and half the time I'm on stage, you know, I'm lucky enough that I'm on stage, I could just, like, look around and I could be like, man, I can't believe I get to play with this person. You know, like, this is fucking amazing that this is what I get to do. You know, and there's people here to see it, and we're gonna, like, you know, we all make a couple of bucks, and I mean, like, it's like living a dream.
So, you know, the other side of that coin, there's being a great leader, and then there's, you know, times you're not the leader, and it's being a great, you know, teammate. What have you learned is most important with that?
Again, I think the support thing, you know, kind of what I was saying before, the supportive role of being, you know, letting whoever is in charge know, like, we're good, I got you, you know, like, I know what's going on, we're cool. You know, now this is all very heady talk too. I'm leaving out, like, all the technical stuff. Like, if you're supporting somebody, if you're on somebody else, like, you have to know the music, like I want to know the music backwards and forwards, and, you know, like, I can't be walking out on stage on somebody else's gig and being like, oh my God, what's the third chord in the bridge? Like, I don't do that. To me, gigs are made or broke in the preparation stage. Once you get to the stage, it's too late. You know, it's like, you know, if you don't know the third chord in the bridge by the time you get there, just, like, don't play it. Like, don't try and figure it out on the fly. Like, that's not cool. You know, like, somebody else will have it, and then go back to the hotel that night and learn it and have it for tomorrow. But that's a big thing with me. The preparation thing is enormous for me. You know, I mean, I prepare way harder than you know. I saw an interview with Michael Jordan once where he said, man, you think I play hard on the court? Like, you should see me in practice. And he swore, you know, that he practiced like 5 times harder than he played in on the court. And I always remembered that. I was like, man, there's a big lesson there, you know.
Totally.
But yeah, I you know, anyway, kind of got off track there. But I think just being supportive and you know, really figuring out if somebody asked me to come and play, I like to know what it was that I do that made them want me. Like what aspect of my playing is it that, because there's a lot of guitar players around and everybody sounds great at this point. Like, it's not that big of a deal to be a guitar player who sounds good anymore. I mean, look on YouTube or Instagram. I mean, everybody can play great. So if somebody asked me to be there, I am curious. I like to try and put out the feelers to like figure out why me? What was it? And and then lean into that a little bit.
Jumping to the side, I'd love to hear something that you now today believe that you didn't believe when you were younger.
About
life.
About life. Well, I think just being real is the most paramount thing in life, period. Like, don't try and fool people about anything, just don't try too hard. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Like, just don't try too hard to be anything that you're not, or just don't try too hard, period. Like, work
How do you
hard.
contrast that with the MJ quote, though?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, like, work hard in private, and know your stuff and know who you are and know what it is you want to do and know your like philosophy about, know where you stand, know who you are. But then when you get out there, just let your work and let your, what you have to offer, let that stand on its own. Don't trying too hard is it just gets embarrassing for everybody.
So you're saying you can try too hard, but in private.
Yeah, well, I think you got to know though too. I mean, I think you got to know when you're trying too hard and when you're trying hard enough that you're improving yourself. Because I think there's a difference. Like for example, if we're talking about music, once I learn something, say if there's a piece of music that I'm struggling with, and then I work for X amount of time on it, and I can do it, I don't want to continue to work on that. I want to check in on it and know that I can still do it. But once I learn something, then it's pointless to spend hours and hours and hours continuing to work on it. Once I get that, I want to move on to the next thing. So you got to know when you've worked enough and when you're not working too much. And it's just like a feeling, you just learn by doing it. It's not in a book somewhere because everybody's so wildly different.
What piece of advice do you think old Scott would give to you today if they had the chance?
I'm not sure. Old Scott's very, very different than who I am now. And I think
I mean old Scott is
you mean like an old guy.
Physically Gandalf Scott.
Dude, I'm already old. I'm getting older. You mean older, Scott. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe just like maybe take a little bit of your own advice and don't work too hard. Like give yourself a break. Like remind yourself the importance of just like, how important it is to just get away from work stuff and and just really enjoy yourself. Which I'm working on. I'm working on it.
So you already got that message.
Yeah. I got the message, but it's easier said than done for me.
I'd love to hear who the first artist was that spoke to you and made you want to pick up a guitar, and what about their music it was that sparked that.
This is funny because I've talked about this a lot, and the first it was very strange. Like I grew up in this super tiny town in New Jersey, called Lambertville, New Jersey, and I went to the smallest public high school in all of the Northeast. Right, I went to a public high school, and I graduated with like 30 kids in my class.
Mm.
It's like tiny, tiny school, and nobody really. There were really like there were no other real. Nobody else was really that interested in music. Really, there were some kids that we would like smoke weed and listen to Hendrix records and stuff. And that was, that was great. And that was like very informative to me, like learning about music that was out there. But the first somehow, and I couldn't really tell you how this tape came into my orbit, but there's a great classic blues record label called Alligator Records. That if you look it up, it's like a really important in the blues world. It's like a really important label, especially from the let's say 70s to the 90s. And there was a record on that label called Sun Seal by a guy named Sun Seals, and it's called Live and Burning. It's a live record from a small Chicago blues club. And man, it is such an awesome recording. Like you could just hear like how gross the bar was, and how like sticky the floors were in this place that they were playing. Like it's like such a juke joint feeling kind of recording. And there was something about the way that guy played guitar on that record. I mean, it's like total like caveman stuff. Like it sounds like he's just like, got a 330 Gibson 335 plugged directly into an amp, no pedals or anything. He plays with his thumb, so he's not playing anything flashy, but it's like all heart. And oh my God, I mean, I still hear it and I can like barely take it. Like it's just so good. I mean, it's amazing. But on that record, I'm sure that a lot of people, in your fan base are Fish fans. On that record is the original version of Funky Bitch, which then becomes like a Fish staple, which sounds nothing like, I mean, when Mike Gordon sings it, it's a little different than when Sun Seals does it. And, but I was amazed when I found out that Fish played it years later, because I was not like, Fish was not on my radar at all in high school. So when I found out that they played it, I was like, what are you talking about? It's like this like beyond obscure album that came out on this tiny blues label. Like I've always wanted to talk to somebody in the band about like how did that come to be, because it's super random that they played that song.
Can't wait to check it out.
Oh man, it's just so good. I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a live blues record. There's like 10 songs on it, and they're all, technically speaking, they're just like 1-4-5. It's a blues record. That's it. Unapologetically live blues record. But for that style of playing and stuff, for me, that's a really, really special record for me, and made me want to learn how do you do that.
I'd love to hear what aspect of music right now is like most appealing to you, and like what aspect of music you like appreciate most currently.
Rhythm. That's easy. Just playing with a good feel, listening for people to see if what they're playing is rhythmically thought about, or how we all have the feeling of we've said things that we haven't meant in the past, and you go back and you can say, man, what was I thinking? Like, why did I say that? But once it's out, you can't. That's it. It's like you said it, and that's it. We all know that feeling, and for me, that's what I'm trying to get away from in playing. I'm trying to cut down those moments as much as possible. I want to take away as many notes as I can where when I hear myself back, I'll be like, man, why did I play that? Like, so it's kind of like this editing. I'm constantly self-editing, over the years, trying to get down to just like the essential thing that I'm trying to say musically. And what I'm finding is that the rhythm, where phrases and notes sit in the rhythm, are becoming the main culprit of that. Because when I don't know what I'm trying to say is when I kind of get weird on the rhythm and things like don't sit right, and it pulls the listener out for a second. You know, the listener can. But if everything that I'm playing or someone is playing is right in the pocket and like really, you know, it's there for a reason, and like there's a pause here and it's because of a reason, and it like, you know, and it's because it's part of telling the story. Man, I mean, you can get away with any notes, you know, playing any, it doesn't matter, like, you know, what scale or notes are correct or whatever. Man, if it's like put in the right place with the right volume up against what everybody else is playing, like anything will be believable.
Well, man, Scott, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone out there, got a link in the description. Keep up with LaMP and, you know, JRAD, everything Scott's got going on. Scott, man, thanks again for taking the time. I got one last question for you.
I figured you would. Thanks for having me so much. It was great.
What advice can you share with all of us about living a life you can look back on and feel proud about?
Yeah, you gotta, I guess, you know, I guess just go with your gut and be gentle with yourself. You know, in the long run, like everybody, I don't think that when I was younger, I don't think I allowed myself to make any mistakes or to be human. You know, I'd really be very, very hard on myself when I was younger, and that started sort of this really tough cycle. And we're all just human beings, and trying to figure this thing out, doing our best. And I think that if you follow your gut, your intentions are good, and you know, you just do what you can, then it all, you know, you'll be all right.